too quickly. You know, and we've got to kind of play where we spend our time with them, but I think we all agree you have to have the stability before you add the force production at high loads. So with that in mind, it's 10 of. Let's comments or questions. That's a lot. I mean, that's a lot of different progression. Anti-brakes, we covered side bend, we covered rotation, we covered flexion extension of the core. The significance of hip mobility, Sermon's work. If you don't have the hip mobility, you're going to compensate at the spine.
How do you spell her last name?
S-A-H.
S-A-H.
Sermon. R-A-M. S-A-H-R-A-M. Shirley?
I-M-A-N.
S-H-R-A-M.
Dr. S-H-R-A-M.
I think it.
S-H-R-A-M. S-A-H-R-M-A-N.
Yeah, Shirley Sarman, Washington University, St. Louis. She's got a ton of research. And if you guys ever get a chance to take one of her courses, she still teaches them. Musculoskeletal imbalances, that was when I graduated from college. That's one of the first courses I took back when I was 23 years old, a long time ago. But everything she taught then is still applicable today. And it's just funny how it's trickled down into the training world. I mean, now everyone's like, oh, you got to read Shirley Sarman's work. It's like, she's been doing this research and work for 50 years. And now it's like mainstream in the fitness world. You got to have the hips moving, you know, to get good squat patterns. And Shirley was pushing this material way back, not in terms of strength training, but in terms of preventing back issues, for keeping your hips mobile. She had all these, you know, the anteromedial hip impingement issues she would talk about because she lacked this. And only now are we starting to understand how accurate and how way ahead of her time she was. If you lack the hip capsule mobility, you're going to pinch in the front. And you have groin pain when you flex up because you don't have the hip capsule mobility in the back. Same rules with the shoulders. So she was brilliant and is brilliant and continues to do great research. You know, her material is so applicable towards Olympic lifting, powerlifting, speed, sprints, and now, you know, of course, continues to be active with back rehab. Questions or comments? Anything you want to review?
So when you're teaching the TRX roll-up, you know, where you're lying on the floor and your heels in the straps, when we first learned it, when you roll back down, they seem round as you roll down. But it sounds like you're saying that you shouldn't.
That's correct.
You shouldn't round. You should go down almost like as a unit.
Yeah. There's, again, keeping in mind, for example, in a Pilates class, sometimes they talk about, the question you always have to ask yourself, what is the objective? Is it a range of motion issue? Like sometimes in Pilates, you know, they'll tell you to roll on up, and they want to go segment by segment, like this. Well, they're trying to create mobility. The question is, what type of load is going through the spine under that condition? So some people, you know, even doing this, there's load through the spine. And if I'm trying to go segment by segment down, yeah, I'm creating mobility, but I'm doing so also while there's a lot of compressive force going through the spine. Some people don't tolerate that, and that might not want to be the blueprint you might want to create when you come on standing and you're teaching them how to load. So visualize if you're doing that same pattern, okay, let's go segment by segment by segment under load. Yeah. Not what we want down there. The blueprint we want is what? This. This is the safer pattern. You know, so that's it. So now if I'm going to do the segment by segment approach, it's an understanding that, you know, I mean, what you're referring to here is my objective is to improve spine range of motion and create a little bit of flexion under, you know, even extension. See, so this could say, okay, I just want to work flexion extension of the spine. It's a mobility, and I'm going to lift and just roll. Just again, I'm trying to create some motion, reduce friction of the vertebrae. But when I start to really think about how this translates into a squat, I'm thinking about lock the core down, neutral spine, up, lock it. It's a great question, Lenny, because it's really about what is your objective. I think of that hip extension thrust as what? A squat pattern. So I want to create a blueprint to create hip extension thrust with a locked spine. But if my objective were, oh, I want to warm my client up and I want a little bit of flexion extension, reduce the friction of the vertebrae, yeah, I'll allow that under light loads.
So when you're doing the full sit-up, though, when you sit all the way up and roll down, it's almost like, I feel like if I try to do it flat back, my hip flexors do all the work.
You mean this?
No, like hands in the air. Your legs are straight.
Yeah.
Hands in the air and roll up.
Oh, you mean, yeah, rolling down like this?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that.
I think a big part of it, though, talk about
Yeah.
controlling
See,
the movement, not
But it's,
doing
I
it.
feel like
Here's the
when
roll,
you're
watch.
doing all
This
the
is
work.
locked in the lumbar spine, right?
Uh-huh.
And again, if I don't default into a hyperextended spine, where can I start to roll segment by segment from? The thoracic spine. There's the roll, thoracic spine, neutral spine locked. Then the roll is where? Thoracic spine. It's very similar to doing this to lock, or picking a keg up, right? If I'm going to come out of neutral,
Uh-huh.
where do I want to come out of neutral at? Thoracic spine, because I might have to conform to the object. But if you watch this, where's the flexion? It's not down here, it's in the thoracic spine. Neutral spine is still rigid and locked in neutral. That's the highest margin of safety to reduce the spine injury.
The thing is though, I think with that roll down, with the rounded spine, in Pilates, that's like one of the main things, rolling out, rolling out. Everybody does that C-curve up and out all the time, and
Yeah.
can maintain it. So are we saying, Bill, that we shouldn't really encourage that too much?
Yeah, I'm not saying anything, I'm just giving physics principles. It's up to what your objective, yeah, but it's a great question. It depends what your objective is and how you use it. And I think that's the question that's missing in the fitness industry. We tell people to do things sometimes, but we never really ask yourself, why are we telling them to do that? So my question to be any instructor, if they did that, and say, what is your objective with that exercise? You know, and if they said, well, it's because I want them to move that way, I would say, do you want them to move that way when they're picking up a heavy load or picking things off the floor? I would question that. If they said, I want to just teach them how to develop segmental force through each vertebrae and contraction, I would say, okay, that's good. Just make sure, you know, it's your client, you know them better. Can they tolerate that load? Is it a low load where they can tolerate that? Because if it's too high of a load, you're teaching them how to come out in neutral in the lumbar spine with a flexion force, which is not good because the physics are that you create a shear force on the vertebrae. These are the things you have to ask in detail, you know, and think about. And I don't have all the answers. I'm just saying these are the questions we all have to ask. But it's a great question. I mean, I see it all the time, you know. And some of it is, I'm willing to come out of that position because I want the benefit of working my abdominals. It's that simple.
But I think originally everyone thought because they were doing the cat and the flat back, so they would take, then it became a roll down, you know, because we were doing the
Yeah.
cat and the, so then
It's,
that,
believe me, I get it in terms of it feels great on the abs, right? I mean, you roll up. And
well, no, not with the legs up, when you're in a, I'm talking about, you know, like.
oh, you mean coming,
Yeah, when you're,
you're coming down segment by segment like this.
well, when you might be here, you might start there first.
Yeah, yeah, right there. Bam, freeze, right there, right there. Keep going, now round the low back, bam. That is a position of high load on the lumbar
Yeah.
spine.
Well, and then I think we started doing that on the TRX, we went feet were in, it's one of the TRX movement patterns, feet in, and then you come up like that with your feet and you reach up. You
Yeah.
know, now for me, it doesn't bother me, but I could see,
It doesn't bother you yet.
no.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah. So the only adjustment I would make on that is
Well, we
maintain the
don't have to
neutral
do that.
spine, the lumbar spine, let the thoracic spine flex, and then go into thoracic extension.
We don't do it.
Yeah,
It's hard in class.
that's the
Yeah.
challenge. That's what, you know,
Yeah.
the challenging
It's one
for
of the
fitness
major
class. Yeah.
Pilates movement patterns is
Yeah.
C-curve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I'm just afraid there's 90% of the class won't be able to do it like that, like you just did it.
So probably won't do it.
Yeah, or you could just have them stay up here and then work on the hip hinging up high. And then you could do what? Take them to the other extreme and just have them work on the thoracic flexion down low and eliminate this part here, which most people can't do, but you could work this part, right? Bracing, you could brace. Add extremity movement while they lock the brace. If they feel their back hyperextending or pain, come up higher and do it. Everything could be adjusted, but as soon as they start to go backwards and they're collapsing into a rounded spine, compressive forces go way up and you're creating a loaded flexions pattern. That's exactly how people get disc injuries. You know, or increases the risk of disc injury. Yeah. I mean, that's the beauty of where we are right now. We have enough research to know what the forces are that are destroying spines. You know, I mean, so it's not debatable in terms of that point. Its question is, how do you apply the information? And you know, the way I break it down, this is just what I've just come my own. You take the information, you apply it. Am I dealing with loaded movement or unloaded movement? Because the difference between I'm willing to let someone round the back to achieve an objective somewhere else. If I want them to improve their squat patterns, to pick things off the floor, I'm willing to let them come out of neutral down here in an unloaded situation, depending on them. I mean, if it's someone who's got a bad disc injury, no, the margin of safety isn't there. But the general person, I'll let them fall out of neutral to achieve the objective of getting hip mobility to teach them how to lift. Then over time, I can get them more straight.
It sounds like you just have to decide whether you're training stability or mobility. And
Yeah.
if it's mobility, a little flexion's fine, but unweighted.
Yeah,
If
or
it's
extension,
stability,
yeah.
yeah, you feel free to weight it, but you don't allow,
Yeah.
don't allow for the mobility.
And that's the same with all forces, you know, even rotation. If I'm working on hip mobility, if the thoracic spine rotates a little, I mean, the thoracic spine can always rotate, but if the lumbar spine rotates a little bit, am I willing to allow that to get hip mobility? Yeah. I don't like this exercise because people round the spine, now they're in a lumbar flexion under a loaded position to try to create hip mobility. Well, why not just put them on their back, get rid of that load on the spine, and create the whole hip mobility this way? Or keep them in neutral and do it this way. So I'm always saying, well, why do I even have to load the spine to create rotation of the hip by doing it this way? It makes no sense to me. Why am I putting a rotational torque in load on the spine in this position? It just makes no sense when the objective is to get the hip mobility. So that's where, again, you start, you know, I mean, that's what I probably do now. I probably have more questions as I get older than when I was younger, but I'm always questioning, why did I do something? But it makes me think it through. I really start, well, what is my objective in this exercise? You know, and, you know, occasionally, you know, you're forced by some clients to play the vanity game. I mean, I have one or two like that. I mean, I have to admit, it's tough. I can see to what they want to do, but, you know, I'm not paying attention as much because they just want to work on their arms or something. But if I'm really thinking about how I structure a human being to create the architectural alignment, to reduce injury, create strength, speed, power, stability, I'm thinking through these all the time. That's what I'm doing with my own workouts. I'm always playing with my own body as an instrument to say, how can I play with these concepts? Yeah. Great questions, though. Fantastic questions. It really makes you start diving in this way, you really start thinking about your movement concepts and, you know, what you're really trying to achieve objectively. Yeah. Yeah. And the challenge, of course, in group fitness is how do you apply these concepts in the group fitness class? You've got to have element classes that are constantly done over and over and over, where there's an explanation of why, if you're loading, you know, why you have to pay attention to your alignment, you know, and downgrading things, because it's hard.
Well, I think that the key is that as long as they feel like they're working out, so the thing is you have to figure out a way to make a simple move, like you said, even the arm movements on that, just adding that in will make it harder so that some of these people who feel like they have to do it full range of
Yeah,
motion.
exactly.
They're all about quantity over quality.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Sound quality over quantity.
yeah, am I sore, am I, is this
That's
hard?
better. Thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
Bill.
that's great,
That was
guys.
great.
Great concepts and
So-
great discussions.
So are we gonna do, is it the first?
First.